Welcome students, today we are going to start 7th chapter of history, and that is civilizing the native, educating the nation. So as I told you earlier students, when Britishers came to India, they had sole motive to conquering the territorial areas, and then they started civilizing the people. And the idea for civilizing was they wanted to change the customs and the values. They wanted to change the whole thing. However, there was a kind of mindset of the Britishers that was first one is Orientalist and the other that was strictly against Orientalist. So let's start our chapter. So students, as you all know, British rule affected everyone such as Rajas and Nawabs, peasants and tribals, every community. For the British in India wanted not only territorial conquest and control over revenues, they also felt that they had a cultural mission. They had to civilize the natives, change their customs and values. So in this chapter, you all will get to know what changes were to be introduced, how were Indians to be educated, civilized and make into what the British believe were good subjects. The British could find no simple answers to these questions. They continued to be debated for many decades. Now, how the British saw education? As British thought and did, and how some of the ideas of education that we now take for granted evolved in the last 200 years. In the process of this inquiry, we will also see how Indians reacted to British ideas and how they developed their own views about how Indians were to be educated. Now let's see the tradition of Orientalism. So it was started in 1783 with William Jones, who moved to Calcutta as a junior judge at the Supreme Court. In addition to being an expert in law, Jones was a linguist. Linguist means the person who knows the several studies, several language. He had studied Greek and Latin at Oxford, knew French and English and picked up Arabic from a friend and had also learned Persian at Calcutta. He began spending many hours today with Pandits who taught him the subtleties of Sanskrit language, grammar, and you can say poetry. Soon he was studying ancient Indian texts on law, philosophy, politics, morality, arithmetic, medicine, and the other sciences. In this figure, you all can see William Jones learning Persian from his friend. Now, let's see. Jones discovered that his interests were shared by many British officials living in Calcutta at the time. Englishmen like Henry Thomas Clorbrock and Nathaniel Held were also busy discovering the ancient Indian heritage, mastering Indian languages, and translating Sanskrit and Persian works into English. Together with them, John set up the Asiatic Society of Bengal and started a journal called Asiatic Researches. Jones and Colebrook came to represent a particular attitude towards India. They shared a deep respect for ancient culture. They were also interested in discovering the ancient India, knowing the Indian past, and during that time, they felt that India was glorified during the past. However, in the recent time, the glory has been declining. So they were working forward for the root cause. They worked forwarded for the establishment of Madrasa was set up in the Calcutta in 1781 to promote the study of Arabic, Persian and Islamic law, and the Hindu College was established in Benares in 1791 to encourage the study of ancient Sanskrit texts that would be useful for the administration of the country. However, there was another set which opposes these ideas of Orientalism, as James Mill was the biggest critic. So he said that the Orientals were full of error. They did not have orientation towards science and technology. They were non-serious. So, to bring in scientific development in their minds is a predominantly requirement, and waste is a lot in development of science and technology. So his aim of education is to be teach what was useful and practical. So there were different views to how to worked upon, and Mill explained that we should consider only the education which is useful and practical, and make Indians familiar with science and technology. So by the 1830s, the attack of the Orientalists became sharper. One of the most outspoken and influential of such critics of the time was Thomas Babington Macaulay. As Thomas Babington Macaulay saw India as an uncivilized country that needed to be civilized. No branch of Eastern knowledge, according to him, could be compared to what England had produced. Who could deny, declared Macaulay, that a single shelf of a good European library was worth of full native literature of India and Arabia? He urged that the British government in India stop wasting public money in promoting Oriental learning, for it was no practical use. So students, as this statement is given by a single shelf of a good European library was worth the whole native literature of India and Arabia. These kind of questions can come in your exam, as you have to explain it, and these can come in your long question type answer. With great energy and passion, Macaulay emphasized the need to teach the English language. He felt that knowledge of English would allow Indians to read some of the finest literature the world had produced. It would make them aware of the development in Western science and philosophy. Teaching of English could thus be a way of civilizing people, changing their taste, values, and culture. Now, as following Macaulay's minute, the English Education Act 1835 was introduced. The decision was to make English the medium of instruction for higher education and to stop the promoting of Oriental institutions like Calcutta Madrasa and Banaras Sanskrit College. These institutions were seen as temple of darkness that were falling of themselves into decay. English textbooks now began to be produced for schools. Education for commerce. In 1854, the Court of Directors of the East India Company in London sent an educational dispatch to the Governor General in India, issued by Charles Wood, the President of the Board of Control of the company. It has come to be known as Wood's Dispatch, outlining the educational policy that was to be followed in India. It emphasized once again the practical benefits of a system of European learning as opposed to Oriental knowledge. Now, as we said, we had court orders that has passed, and Wood's Dispatch came into being. As Woods was the Governor General, so basically he let down the ideas to the Governor General, and these were issued by Charles Wood. What were ideas behind Wood's Dispatch? First of all, it emphasized European learning. It said that English should be the medium of instruction. It focused on benefit of the education from the economic perspective. So education should be one that could provide the benefit for the trade and commerce in the region. Again, they said that education is useful, which can provide or improve the moral character of the people, bring more trustworthiness and honesty. So, good civil servant could be appointed, and numerous education departments were established to control the education. There were numerous universities that were established during that time, as you had 1857 revolt that was going on. So you had universities in Madras, Bombay and Calcutta. As here you all can see a Bombay University in the 19th century. Now during this period, Christian missionary also dominating the scenario. However, the thing was the Christian missionaries basically trying to promote practical education, and during that time they were basically trying to criticize the practical education and to promote the moral education. And during that time the Britishers were a kind of bit opposed to the Christian missionaries, fearing the fact if they are supporting the Christian missionaries, people in India would develop suspicious about the British rule in India. So they were not well versed, or we can say they were not good in line in Christian missionaries during that time. However, that time we had Serampore mission that was started with William Carey under Danish East India Company, and during that time we had a printing press that was established in 1800, and the college that was established in 1818. Now question arises, what happened to the local schools? Do you have any idea of how children were taught in pre-British times? Have you ever wondered whether they went to schools? And if they are going to schools, what happened to these under British rules? Now here we are having the one report of William Adam. In the 1830s, William Adam, a Scottish missionary, toured the districts of Bengal and Bihar. He had been asked by the company to report on the progress of education in vernacular schools. The report Adam produced is interesting, as however there was main loophole here, that was Indian was basically learning in the pathshalas, or we can say gurukuls during that time, and each and every pathshala had around 20 students, and there were more than thousands of pathshala across only Bengal and Bihar. There were around 20 lakh students that were enrolled into these pathshalas. So you had nearly 1 lakh pathshalas where you had 20 lakh students which were enrolled. And the best part of it was, even a child of a peasant was able to learn, because those pathshalas used to run based on the harvesting season, considering India to be predominantly the agricultural land. So when there was the harvesting season, there was no classes. After the harvesting season was over, sowing was done, the classes used to start. Here you had pathshalas along with the flexible education. Here we are having no fixed fee, no printed books, no separate school buildings, no benches or chairs, no blackboard, no system of separate classes, no roll call register, no annual examination, and no regular timetable. The teaching was predominantly oral. It means no written text. Teaching was happened in under the banyan tree or any tree at Guru's house only. New routines, new rules. Up to the mid 19th century, the company was concerned primarily with higher education, so it allowed the local pathshalas to function without much interference. After 1854, the company decided to improve the system of vernacular education. It felt that this could be done by introducing order within the system, imposing routines, establishing rules, ensuring regular inspections. Now, how was this to be done? What measures did the company undertake? It appointed a number of government pundits, each in charge of looking after 4 to 5 schools. The task of the pandit was to visit the pathshala and try and improve the standard of teaching. Each guru was asked to submit periodic reports and take classes according to a regular timetable. Teaching was now to be based on textbooks, and learning was to be tested through a system of annual examination. Students were asked to pay a regular fee, attend regular classes, sit on fixed seats, and obey the new rules of discipline. Now, Pathshala, which accepted the new rules, were supported through government's grants. Those who were unwilling to work within the new system received no government support. Over time, gurus who wanted to retain their independence found it difficult to compete with the government aided and regulated pathshalas. Now, the new rules and routines had another consequence. In the earlier system, children from poor peasant families had been able to go pathshala since the timetable was flexible. But now, the discipline of the new system demanded regular attendance, even during harvest time when children of poor families had to work in the fields. Inability to attend school came to be seen as indiscipline, as evidence of the lack of desire to learn. Later on, we have Agenda for National Education. In that, they said that the Western education is important and we must embed it into all system to attain good education system. However, there were two people who worked around this idea, and they were Mahatma Gandhi and second was Rabindranath Tagore. Both were believed in educating the mass, but their ideologies differed significantly. Mahatma Gandhi, on one hand, was a strong opposer of the Western education. Gandhiji was a strong believer that we should work around with our own tradition system of knowledge. Only that knowledge is useful, which can help us developing skills, which can power us, and even if we are writing and reading text and we are not going for oral literature, what was profounded Western education system, it's of no use if the education cannot bring in self-respect and dignity to an individual. So those who are aspects for Gandhiji's formulated and basically believed us, he said that English education is basically enslaved us. We are working towards a kind of brighter future with the West, but we are accepting everything from the West, keeping in view or not understanding the drawback that we are receiving. We are ultimately being enslaved into our own nation. So those were the ideas that Mahatma Gandhi propagated. So he said Indian languages should be the medium of instruction. We should bring in the education which would bring self dignity, self respect. So education should develop mind and soul. Literacy itself is not an education. That was again one of the key aspects that we propounded. And what happened? So these are the things that we have to focus more on, that these are the things that we have to talk about, and as they are giving knowledge as important, oral knowledge as used to be taught in our pathshalas and in our gurukuls, it's important. And if we must formulate it, or we must go for it, rather than just working around the written and the reading part in the textbook as given in the Western education. Students, as just now I told you that two people were there who worked around this idea. First one was Mahatma Gandhi and second one was Rabindranath Tagore. As Rabindranath Tagore, who is in his childhood opposes, or we can say he was against the school education system, he considered school as a prison and wanted students to develop a creative outlook. As a result, he established Shanti Niketan in 1901. As the experience of his school days in Calcutta shaped Tagore's idea of education. On growing up, he wanted to set up a school where the child was happy, where she could be free and creative, where she was able to explore her own thoughts and desire. Tagore felt that childhood ought to be a time of self learning outside the rigid and restricting discipline of the schooling system set up by the Britishers. Teachers had to be imaginative, understand the child, and help the child develop for curiosity. According to Tagore, the existing schools killed the natural desire of the child to be creative, her sense of wonder. As what he did around 100 kilometer away from Calcutta, the main city, and there he talked about teachers with imagination beginning out creativity into students. And the best part of that he brought about was we should bring in or merge Western education along with the Indian art, music, dance, and the Indian traditional values. So, the idea was a kind of merger with Western education with the Indian education, which is propounded by Tagore's. However, the Tagore view our learning should be creative, should be open ended for students. There should be no rigid discipline. The difference between the ideology we had talked about. Many individuals and thinkers were thus thinking about the way a national educational system could be fashioned. Some wanted changes within the system set up by the British and felt that the system could be extended so as to include wider sections of people. Others urged that alternative system be created so that people were educated into a culture that was truly national. So here you all can see the picture of children playing in a missionary school in Coimbatore early 20th century. By the mid 19th century, schools for girls were being set up by Christian missionaries and Indian Reforms Organization. So, as every time we are having a worldwide description in our history, so here we are going to read about the next important thing, and that was Education Act in 1870. So till now there was no widespread education, there was poverty, child labor was prevalent, and the people was also not sending their wards to school. So these were the things that was basically gaining power that time. Again, those two wealthy families or those who are believing in the Christian missionaries and they were enrolled to the church, or we can say all the schools were basically limited to those who are working to the church. Now during this period we had a famous thinker, Thomas Arnold, and he talked about, as he was basically the headmaster of the private school Rugby, he favored the secondary school curriculum. He said that to become a civilized adult there is need to understand the society's nation, or right or wrong, proper or improper behavior, and therefore he forwarded a kind of classics that could be developed with the discipline of the mind. So those were the things that were propounded for the education system during that time. We will talk about more about organizing the reforms in further chapters of history. So with this we had completed explanation of this chapter. So our first question is, match the following. William Jones, as he is having respect for ancient cultures. Rabindranath Tagore, learning in a natural environment. Thomas Macaulay, promotion of English education. Mahatma Gandhi, critical of English education. Pathshalas, related to gurus. Now next is state whether true or false. Your first question is, James Mill was a severe critic of the Orientalist. So your answer is true. And second one is, the 1854 dispatch on education was in favor of English being introduced as a medium of higher education in India. Answer is true. And then third one is, Mahatma Gandhi thought that promotion of literacy was the most important aim of education? Answer is false. Then D part is Rabindranath Tagore felt that children ought to be subjected to strict discipline. So your answer is false. Now let's see question number 3. As question number 3 is, why did William Jones feel the need to study Indian history, philosophy and law? And answer is, William Jones shared a deep respect for ancient cultures, both India and the West. Indian civilization, he felt, had attained its glory in the ancient past but had subsequently declined. In order to understand India, it was necessary to discover the sacred and legal texts that were produced in the ancient period, for only those texts could reveal the real idea and laws of the Hindus and Muslims. William Jones believed that only a new study of these texts could form the basis of future development in India. Now your question number 4 is, why did James Mill and Thomas Macaulay think that European education was essential in India? So your answer is, James Mill and Thomas Macaulay were critical of the Orientalist vision of learning. They believed that the knowledge of the East was full of errors and unscientific thought, that Eastern literature was non-serious and light-hearted, that no branch of Eastern knowledge could be compared to what had been produced in Europe and especially in England, that the British government was wasting both effort and public money in promoting Oriental learning as it was of no practical use. They saw India as an uncivilized country that needed to be civilized. For them, the aim of education was to teach what was useful and practical. European education was thus essential in India. English language education was essential in India. Indians needed to be made familiar with the scientific, technical, and philosophical advances that the West had made. They needed to be exposed to the great poets and writers of the West. Their tastes, values, and culture needed to be changed. This, according to them, was the right way forward. Now, question number 5 is, why did Mahatma Gandhi want to teach children handicrafts? So your answer is, Mahatma Gandhi wanted to teach children handicrafts as it would help to develop the child's mind and soul. Gandhiji felt that children needed to work with their hands, learn a useful handicraft, and know how different things operated. This would develop their mind and capacity to understand. Now question number 6 is, why did Mahatma Gandhi think that English education had enslaved Indians? So your answer is, Mahatma Gandhi thought that English education had enslaved us because it created a sense of inferiority in the minds of Indian. Secondly, we can say it made them see Western civilization as superior and destroyed their pride in their own culture. Thus, charmed by the West and by everything coming from the West, the Indians educated under the colonial system would end up being the admirers of British rule in India. Thirdly, we can say it would also not help in related to the masses. Now our fourth point is, it focused on reading and writing rather than oral knowledge. Now this is a time for home assignment, and your first question is, you have to find out from your grandparents about what they studied in school, and second question is, you have to find out about the history of your school. I hope you all will enjoy by doing this home assignment. This is how explanation of this chapter and discussion of question answers of this chapter has been done. Now we will meet in further lectures. Till the time, goodbye.